Hi, this is Brendan from Watto Training, and in this tutorial we take a look at professional driver trainer information for Queensland applicants. The main source of information for this tutorial comes from the Transport Main Roads website, www.tmr.qld.gov.au. That is the source of information for which applicants should primarily check to find the latest information. The information in this tutorial is general in nature, and for interstate applicants, again, we refer you back to your state and territory information as your primary source. There has also been information drawn from the Keys to Drive website, www.keystodrive.com.au. Now you'll notice in this tutorial that there's a little bit of variation at times between the information given between the Keys to Drive information and the TMR information. Most of the road rules across the country are the same. However, there is a little bit of variation from state to state. So please keep that in mind as we proceed. I've tried to make it as clear as possible, but if you notice the variations, again, I just direct you back to your state and territory transport departments to get your information from that source. The principal objective of a professional driver trainer is to provide an educational experience to learner drivers which promotes the necessary knowledge, attitude, and skill base for the efficient and safe operation of a motor vehicle on our public road system. This can be achieved through attitudes, building attitudes leading to a cooperative and responsible conduct on our road system. An attitude refers to a set of emotions, beliefs, and behaviors towards a particular object, person, thing, or event. Attitudes are often the result of experience or upbringing, or both, and they can have a powerful influence over behavior. Developing habits, knowledge, and skills that will enable the learner to become proficient drivers under a variety of changing conditions. In the slides that follow are a list of driving actions that form the basis of good driving habits. Opinions differ on what's correct when it comes to driving habits. This list conforms to what most professional driving instructors teach. And I again reference this information is lifted from the Keys to Drive website, and I've expanded upon that with diagrams and explanations where applicable. Preparing to drive. Adjust the seat for effective control and comfort. Fit and adjust your seatbelt and head restraint. Check your passengers are safely seated. Adjust all three mirrors for the best view. Indicate for at least 5 seconds before you pull out from the curb. Indicate for at least 2 seconds before beginning to change lanes. Now, I'll hasten to add that that information, which is from the Keys to Drive website, we need to contrast that with our state information for the performance outcome of signalling as per the QSafe Policies and Procedures Manual, page 58. So if you're training a learner who will be taking a driving test in Queensland, this is the performance outcome that you need to refer to. The applicant should signal in the correct direction long enough to give sufficient warning to other drivers and pedestrians when intending to turn, diverge, move into the edge of the road or curb, enter a line of traffic, at a T-section where the continuing road curves to the left or right, leaving the continuing road to proceed straight ahead onto the terminating road. The applicant should signal in the correct direction for 5 seconds before moving off from a stationary position. So I note that that's in line with what the Keys to Drive information presents, but I'll just draw your attention back to that first sentence. The applicant should signal in the correct direction long enough to give sufficient warning. So rather than giving an arbitrary time, they've put that word sufficient. And in simple terms, sufficient means enough. Back to the Keys to Drive habits. Indicating. Indicate for at least 3 seconds before turning. Look in your mirror before you indicate. Look in your mirror before you put your foot on the brake, and indicate before you brake. Now, with these 4 dot points, the first thing is on the first dot point, I reference the last slide from QSafe, so we've already addressed that issue. Look in your mirror before you indicate, look in your mirror before you put your foot on the brake, and indicate before you brake. People might be wondering what that actually means. We need to put that into context. This links into what is called the system of vehicle control. Now, the system of vehicle control aims to allow the driver to come down to a T-section, such as the one that we're looking at here, to take a left turn. And it's a number of steps that are applied for a given situation so that the learner driver is in the correct position on the road, in the correct gear if manual, and at the correct speed for any given situation. It's applicable in a range of situations, but our example is the left turn. So step one, give the direction. So the instructor would say at the end of the road, we'll take a left turn. Step two, mirror check for our situational awareness about what's happening around our vehicle. For example, are we being heavily tailgated? 3, signal with the left indicator. Again, sufficient notice. 4, adjust speed and position. So you'd find the driver is starting to move a little bit towards the left of the lane and slowing down with the foot brake. And if in a manual, step 5, gearing down through the gears to a sufficient gear. If we come up to a corner like this one, and notice there's no markings or signs, it's just a standard T-section, the driver would probably be working down to second gear, scan up on the right, scan to the left, scan back to the right, and if clear, probably go around in second gear. If a vehicle came, the driver would stop, take evasive action, wait, reset in first gear, and then when clear, move off and follow the road. Okay, back to our keys to drive habits. Indicate before you steer off a roundabout. Look around you. Slow down if you can't see what's happening 5 seconds in front of you. So this one as well, again, coming back to our Queensland applicants, there is no arbitrary 5 vehicles in front of you. It's, again, to create that space cushion in front, which in Queensland they call safety margins, so that if, for example, this person walks out on the road at night into our pathway, we have sufficient time to take action and avoid that person either through braking or swerving or whatever it is. It probably would depend on what speed you're doing as to what action you were taking. Okay, slow down at intersections and look for other cars, even if you have right of way. That expression, right of way, is used on the Keys to Drive website. However, that phrasing is not commonly used these days because the phrase right of way has been removed to say we only proceed if it's safe to do so. So you have to promote scanning and planning, and also that the priority is to avoid a crash rather than say, well, I got the right of way, so I'm just going to go. It's a more of a defensive driving approach, and it will lower the chances of having a crash if people are prepared for the unexpected. Look into intersections regardless of having right of way. That's following on from our last slide. And keep your eyes scanning the situation all around you. So we can see here driver A on the right of screen is doing 70 k's an hour. The motorcycle is doing 50 k's an hour, and we've got an oncoming vehicle, car C. So scanning is essential and leads to making sound decisions or choosing not to act. Look over your shoulder, also in some states known as a head check, before beginning to change lanes and in other situations where vehicles could be in your blind spot. Don't bend the rules. Come to a complete stop, no rolling, at stop signs. One of my common instructions on stop signs is think of it as a stop and look sign. Traffic engineers and other road safety experts have decided that stop signs or stop lines should be put in places quite often when there's obscured vision, and quite often there may even be a history of T-bones happening at those places. So they need to be treated with a high degree of respect and due care and attention. Don't bend the rules. Ensure your maximum speed is always slightly under the speed limit. Don't bend the rules. Stop for amber lights unless it is not safe. Stop for green lights when traffic in front of you is not leaving the intersection. So if it's a blocked intersection, you can't enter the intersection until it's clear. Stay at least 3 seconds travel time behind the car immediately in front of you. that will hopefully create sufficient space to avoid what we can see in the diagram there. If I just go to the next slide, I'll just make a little note. In Queensland, Transport Main Roads recommends 2 seconds in good conditions, while in New South Wales, the RMS recommends 3 seconds. So again, this following distance does vary from state and territory. Again, I defer you back to your local information, but I would say as a driver trainer, I would certainly be promoting 3 because it buys you a little bit more response time. If your learner doesn't act, you have time to go to your dual controls. Change lanes as little as possible. If everyone sat just below the speed limit, had the correct road position, correct following distance, and generally stayed in their lane and drove around as per the road rules, it would lower the chances of a lot of crashes occurring. It is necessary for people to change lanes for various reasons, but the point they're making here is just to be as predictable as possible with your driving. And I do note there's no signaling on that vehicle as well. Okay, leave a space when stopping behind a vehicle to drive around it if you have to. So we can see here we've got a red light, we've got a line of traffic, and the first 2 cars, car 2 is too close, car 3, a common driver trainer statement is you should be able to look down and see where the tyres meet the tar, i.e. the tyres meet the bitumen road. Another couple of ways to think of it is, as they say, if the second car breaks down, that you have some space to move out without having to reverse back and get around that second vehicle to drive on. And also one that I sort of put as my highest priority is if there's an emergency vehicle coming, if there's sufficient space between all the cars, we have some shimmy space to all shimmy out of the way and allow the emergency vehicle to get to the emergency. I think it's sort of socially a social responsibility of us as drivers to be thinking if that was our family member who was in that situation, that we would like to think that the emergency vehicle could get as quickly as possible to help that person or people. Slow down when approaching green traffic lights to check and make sure no one is running a red light. We can't drive into traffic light situations making the assumption that people will stop. We have to be prepared for the unexpected. Okay, now we're back to the information from the Transport Main Roads website. And we're up to the point of what they call awareness, creating awareness so that learner drivers are able to identify and apply techniques to counteract potential dangers. We can see in our diagram we've got what's called a block out. So the driver of vehicle A can't see past the truck to the pedestrian wishing to cross the pedestrian crossing. So this is where we have to work on our awareness with our learner drivers. Same in the diagram on the right, with the driver moving around in that position with the heavy vehicle, again creating a block out. So we don't want to drive with assumption, we want to drive with awareness of there could be a vehicle hidden behind another vehicle, etc. Facilitating a knowledge and understanding of the road rules. It's critical as driver trainers that we educate our drivers on the correct application of road rules. And a good example is the one on the right. Some people might say, oh, that's only relevant for truck drivers, but we need to educate motorcycle riders and car drivers as well onto what that sign means, because they have a role to play in positioning as well on corners for safe execution of turns. Capabilities and limitations. Giving an understanding of their own capabilities and limitations as a driver and enabling the learner to make suitable corrections and compensations for their own limitations. This is a really important one. Learner drivers will generally, and I use the word generally, not be experienced drivers because they're developing and they're building their experience base. So the analogy I like to think of is when you learn to surf, that you learn to surf in small, gentle, calm waves. You don't go to Waimea Bay and say, oh, I'm just going to go straight out and catch the biggest waves possible. It's dangerous and you probably will get hurt. So we have to graduate our progression up the scale. To achieve this, accredited driver trainers should. Okay, and these are TMR top tips. So consider the learner driver as an individual. A number of studies have shown the value of getting to know your students and building rapport can lead to increased student participation, student motivation about learning, and positive perception of the instructor. Be in control, but also show empathy. Empathy is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference, that is, the capacity to place oneself in another's position. Be approachable. Being approachable is the foundation of building good relationships with your colleagues and of creating a strong team in which confidence can grow and ideas can flow. You can improve how approachable you are by breaking down barriers and creating an environment of trust. Be patient. Having patience means being able to wait calmly in the face of frustration or adversity. So anywhere there is frustration or adversity, i.e. nearly everywhere, we have the opportunity to practice it. Provide appropriate feedback. Giving effective feedback is a vital part of communication. Feedback clarifies expectations, helps people learn from their mistakes, and builds confidence. Give praise if deserved. Being praised makes the recipient feel good about themselves, and this can help boost their performance. Use the right senses. Humans have 5 basic senses: touch, sight, hearing, smell, and taste. Note I've highlighted the 2 most important ones for drivers: sight and hearing. The sensing organs associated with each sense send information to the brain to help us understand and perceive the world around us. Be wary of learners driving with music, like loud blaring music on, because they won't be able to hear emergency vehicles and that type of thing. And you might be able to hear a big Harley coming up the road, but there's other quieter vehicles. And we have to be wary of like food delivery scooters and that type of thing, which are quite quiet as well in comparison. Keep instructions simple. Making the simple complicated is commonplace. Making the complicated simple, awesomely simple, that's creativity. Charles Mingus. I think that's a really, really powerful quote and one that I constantly go back to. I say to people, it's easy to complicate things. It's easy to, anyone can do that. But to actually simplify things, it doesn't mean dumbing it down. It means making it highly consumable to the average person. You've also got issues like people being scared of not knowing. So this is a really powerful one. Consider the human factor. We're all human. We all make mistakes and forget things. Our attention span is limited. We overlook key information when making decisions. We get distracted, bored, tired, or preoccupied. We mishear and we misunderstand. These are as much a part of human life as breathing and sleeping. Human factors involves understanding and managing the capabilities and limitations of people. Set a good example at all times. Trainers are someone their students can look up to, someone to emulate, role models, and are thus expected to behave as such both in and outside of training sessions. Okay, assessment preliminaries. Prior to the licensed candidate undertaking the driving assessment, accredited driver trainers should ensure that all client eligibility requirements have been checked and confirmed. All required documentation, including evidence of the successful completion of the knowledge test questions, the candidate's learner license and logbook have been presented and approved. The assessment vehicle must be a suitable type and meet assessment requirements for the license class. Refer to the QSafe Driver License Assessment Policy, QSafe. Pre-assessment checklist. Accredited driver trainers should maintain a pre-assessment checklist designed to ensure the licensed candidate's readiness to begin the formal assessment process. The licensed candidate can be deemed to be test ready only if the evidence gathered by the driver trainer is valid, sufficient, current, and authentic. This evidence should be collected, compiled, and kept by the driver trainer as part of their record-keeping obligations. The pre-assessment checklist should include client details, for example, name, license number, date, etc. Client eligibility, for example, hold the correct license, class of license for the appropriate period. Fitness of applicant, for example, drugs and alcohol, medical condition. Administrative tasks, for example, fees and forms. Theory questions, such as road rules. Pre-drive vehicle safety checks, external and internal. Operating procedures, such as starting. Low-risk driving behaviours. Vehicle operation, for example, steering, braking, clutch, gears, turns, accelerator, road position, observation, scanning, mirrors, and signals. Maneuvers, for example, reversing, hill start, turn around, U-turn, and reverse park. And finally, vehicle shutdown procedures. QSafe. QSafe is a valuable resource and an important component of the driving task undertaken by the licensed candidate for assessment purposes. The accredited driver trainer must be fully acquainted with information relating to the specific performance criteria as detailed in QSafe. All performance checks detailed in QSafe have a defined performance outcome, giving the accredited driver trainer an indication of what is expected for that particular driving task. The accredited driver trainer should inform the learner driver of the skills that will be assessed, which include technical on-road skills required for the efficient and safe management of the motor vehicle. The role of the accredited driver trainer is primarily to provide subject matter expertise, whilst maintaining a strong focus on quality training and assessment outcomes. Thanks for watching. For more information, please go to www.tmr.qld.gov.au.